Hi, I'm Carrie Breen, and I'm thrilled to be here with Gabrielle Zevin, author of The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. Thank you so much for joining us, Gabrielle, and congratulations. We just found out that the paperback edition is debuting at number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yes, it's very exciting. Thanks for having me, Carrie.
Sure. I love the part towards the beginning of the book where Amelia and AJ first meet, and she is the eager sales rep and he's the cranky bookseller. And it got me wondering, why do authors want to write about publishing and bookselling and remove the curtain, so to speak, to show readers what happens behind the books?
I don't know, but I do know, so I'll pretend I know.
Okay.
I actually don't know, in some level, what makes me want to write any particular book, but I will say that I published my first novel about 10 years ago, and so on some level, publishing a novel was the great trauma of my 20s, and so I kind of felt like I wanted to write about anything that's traumatic that happens to me. I tend to want to write about, to try to figure out what happened, and I really think that after what had been about 10 years of doing it, publishing had changed so much and so quickly. Like 10 years ago, there weren't really ebooks in that way, and many, technology has changed, and the way we even interact with authors has changed with sort of Twitter and everything. And I wanted to write about, the ways in which these changes have kind of affected publishing and affected storytelling and affected readers. So I think that's somewhere around the reason I did it.
One of my favorite things about the novel is that each character is defined by what they read. AJ loves short stories, Amelia hates Moby Dick, and the police officers read crime fiction. Was it important to you to write about how books enrich people's lives because of the current fears about the future of the publishing industry?
Yes, but I also think just when I meet a person, and I've thought a lot because I've written, this is my 8th novel, I've written other novels, about sort of how we build a character. And I think that sort of physical description can sometimes be a sort of limiting way to think about character. Like you can say, oh, that's Gabrielle, she has like black curly hair and, she has green eyes or something. But if you asked me what my favorite book was, you would find out something deeper about me. So I wanted to write a book where everybody really was defined in terms of like how they read and what they read, because on some level, to me, this is a far more interesting question, and it's a better way of choosing friends and lovers than everybody else.
Which character in the book would you say that you have the most in common with as far as reading taste?
Well, AJ is not my taste. He's far more into short story collections than I am, actually. But as I say that, I think it turns out I read tons of them. So even as I say it, I think it's a little bit of a lie. A lot of AJ's tastes kind of negate my own work, and I realized while I was writing the book that AJ probably wouldn't entirely approve of me, and he, maybe would like The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry if like only to recommend it to other people, but it probably wouldn't be optimally to his taste,
So it's more like, which character do you not have the same reading taste as, a little bit?
No, sometimes I can be a little bit of a Lambiase. He reads crime, and I certainly have a thing where I like Jeffrey Deaver. And actually, crime for me was always something I could share with my dad because he's kind of a big crime reader, and I feel like the great thing about sort of living long or living longer is that you get to be lots of different readers in your life. When you're a child, you read certain kinds of books, and then you grow older, and those books change for you. And and so it kind of fascinates me the way that we have a life, and then if we're readers, we have this reading life that is a different life.
So earlier this year, Audie Cornish of All Things Considered asked you which 3 books define you, and you answered Charlotte's Web. Then we came to the end of Song of Solomon, but you said that if asked on a different day, you might have a different answer. So I was wondering what 3 books would define you today.
Geez, that's so funny. I noticed recently that one of my favorite books that I never remember to say, so I'm happy I'm able to say it today, is Bonfire of the Vanities by Tom Wolfe. And I don't have a good reason that that's so, except that to me as a writer, as a young writer starting out, it was exactly the kind of book I wanted to write, and it's exactly not at all like the books I've written. But it had, it's this big, huge canvas. It's a New York story. There's so many characters in it. It's the opposite in so many ways of the storied life of A.J. Fikry, but I love it so much. Let's see, books that define me. It's so funny. My brain always goes blank. Okay, so I'll say Stoner by John Williams, which I just read this year. When I was young, the first piece of real literary fiction I read was either Song of Solomon or Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, because I had a very good and ambitious English teacher who put meaty things in front of us, for which I'm very grateful. And I remember reading Ellison's Invisible Man and coming to the end of it, and the last line of that book is, "Who knows but that on the lower frequencies I speak for you." And to me, this line was so revelatory, because you've read this book about the struggles of sort of an African-American man, and you get to the end and you think, but it opens up in such a broader way to say that, perhaps, there is something for you in this story that doesn't at all seem to be about you. And so it's something I always adore in a book, this idea that it opens up to include the reader somehow in the experience. So those are 3 books, all by men, which is really terrible.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Are you working on anything now that you could tell us about, and is it young adult or adult fiction?
So at this moment, there is no story that's occurring to me that involves young adult protagonists. So there probably won't be a young adult book until I'm struck with something I must tell a teen audience, But I am working on a couple books. I have one book that I'm I'm supposed to be writing, and then I have the other book that is always, there's nothing so sexy as the idea you're not working on at the time, so that I'm kind of playing with writing on the side. It's my piece on the side, kind of book. And sometimes it's just a race to see when you get to the end, like, or it's almost like the Hunger Games of books, because sometimes one doesn't make it to the end,
Thank you so much for joining us, Gabrielle. I loved your book, and I'm so glad that you were able to talk to us today.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you.